Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the January 19th meeting of the Millis School Committee. My name is Carrie Roach. I'm your current chair. I will start off by letting you know that this meeting is being recorded and can be viewed on YouTube.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'll take roll call. Robin Briggs.
Here.
Stephen Catalano.
Here.
Mark Conroy.
Here.
Denise Gibbons.
Here.
Bob Mullaney, Superintendent.
Here.
Terry Wiggins is here. And we do have a student rep, Ben.
Here.
So why don't we go ahead and start with, Ben, if you want to give the update, we can start with you.
So not much to report. Tomorrow, Wednesday the 20th, marks the start of the third quarter for the high school. And on Tuesday, January 26th, the juniors will be taking the PSATs inside of the school.
Okay, short and sweet. Thanks, Ben. Before we get to action items, I will just want to let you guys know. So for open session, as normal, we have an email address set up. So if you have any questions during the meeting, if you can email that to the email address S as in Sam, C as in Charlie's, 0119. So it's the date at millisschools.org. So again, it's SC0119@millisschools.org. So any questions throughout the meeting, go ahead, feel free to email us. And as usual, we'll compile any of the emails or any of the questions and get them answered and post them by the end of the week. Okay, so action items, consideration to approve the 1/5/21 meeting minutes. Anyone want to make a motion?
Here.
Ms. Briggs.
I move that we approve the January 5th, 2020 meeting minutes.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion?
I think they're actually the 21
21.
21. You're
Yes.
right.
meeting minutes.
Got it.
To get used to that. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries. Perfect. Okay, we're going to go right into the superintendent's report. So Bob, if you want to take over, whichever order you want to do it in.
Okay, I'll start with our COVID update. Currently, we have 9 positive cases in our schools. And we have 54 students who are out as close contacts, and that is our highest number of students who have been out as close contacts. Most of those students who are out as close contacts are out because of contacts outside of school. You know, they're in the same activity outside of school, etc. We still are not seeing any evidence of in-school transmission, which is a positive thing. Staffing, we have a few staff who are out as close contacts, but our staffing should be sufficient when we start back in person on Thursday. And you know, we're really hoping that that continues. There are a number of districts in our area that have had to go remote in some of their schools because of staffing issues, not having enough coverage, but hopefully we're all right there.
So I know, Bob, that in the health and safety meetings that we're in every Friday, the Board of Health is hoping that this is kind of our post-Christmas, New Year's peak. Even though we've said that for a couple of weeks now, but we're hoping that we start to see it turn around.
Right. And I did send a message home today regarding some new guidance from our Board of Health with close contacts and quarantining. And I think there has been a little confusion with that. I will be meeting with the nurses tomorrow and, you know, discussing those new guidelines from the Board of Health in relation to those students who are close quarantining right now. So we will get together on that and we can get some clarification on that.
Thanks. I'll add to that too. So just so everyone knows, so the health and safety, the Board of Health makes recommendations. And so we always defer to the Board of Health whenever they want to change the guidelines or want to, either way, whether they want to loosen them up or tighten them up a little. And this was a request from the Millis Board of Health to sort of come away from the, testing out in 7 days, that they would like to see a stricter guideline. So, so that's, we're obviously going to defer. We've always said we'll defer to the health experts. None of us are. They are. So we'll do that. And thank you for, understanding that we do have a lot of close contacts out there, and know that there are questions on how does that affect your current quarantine process. So thank you for kind of, taking a step back and figuring that out. And like you said, get that information out to everyone out there that's currently in part of a quarantine.
Right. Yeah.
Any other questions from anyone on the committee about that?
Okay. Excuse me. Then our enrollment, for the district for the month of January is at 1159. That's up 1. We had a new student in the high school. Choice is down to 89, I believe. We had a choice student who has in January moved into the district. So we have one fewer choice student, but it doesn't impact our overall student population. And then one of the questions that a lot of people have and we want to be ready for is if and when we can start with more in-person learning at the Millis schools. And I know the metrics right now, we have a lot of positive cases of COVID in our community and surrounding communities. However, we want to be ready to move when the timing is right to get more kids into our buildings. And we're looking at it in a two-pronged way. One thing we'd like to do is get more students who are really struggling in our current hybrid model to see if we can get more of those students into the buildings. We have the students who have been designated as high need students by the state who are in more than 2 days per week. And we'd like to see if we can reach out to some other students who are really struggling in this hybrid model. And the second area we're looking at also is having full in-person levels, full in-person learning at particular grade levels. And right now we're kind of targeting the younger grades, K through 2. And we're looking at a staggered approach where we'd bring in one class grade level rather, and kind of test our systems. And after a few weeks of those students being in-person learning, move on to another grade level. That's kind of the process we're looking at. And for right now, when we're saying full in person, that would mean four days out of 5. The fifth day would still be remote. And there's a number of factors where, obviously we have to consider, including the 6-foot spacing, the number of students who would remain in remote, and how many students we can fit on our buses that are taking buses. So those are the things we're looking at right now as we look to expand in-person learning.
Thanks, Bob. So right now there's no, we don't have a timeline. We don't have a date. We're really just there. Like you said, there's a number of factors that we're looking at. One being the numbers, the COVID numbers, and when's the right time. So right now, like we've just talked about, we're seeing the numbers go in the wrong direction, right? So we're still seeing it increase. So, again, there's, like Bob said, there's a number of logistical factors that have to happen and that we're working on, and Bob and his team are working on, like transportation and how many kids can we fit. We have to stay within the 6-foot distance. How does that affect lunchtime and all of that, staffing, as well as the health metrics itself, and we also have MOAs, and we have to, there's process that have to happen, and there's things that have to happen. So we are working on all that, and we can start to give regular updates. We'll keep it as an agenda item on every school committee, so we can give just regular updates on where we are in that process. But it's not just so the general public, the community knows, it is something that we've never taken our foot off of, and continue to look at it and continue to try to get kids back into the building as quickly as possible. But there are a number of factors that go into getting that done and getting it done safely.
Right, and I neglected to mention another factor.
Is he frozen or is it just
educators?
Go ahead, Bob. You were frozen for a second.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
One of the other factors is the vaccination. Right now, teachers are slated for phase 2. The window they've given us for that is from February to April, so it's pretty big window, and that may have some impact on us moving forward. There's also been some discussion about pooled testing for students in schools. And at this time, we're not sure if the pool testing is right for our system. And just real quick, pool testing is you have a group of students or staff, 10 people at a time use one tube to put all their samples in. The tube gets tested. If it comes back with a positive result, then you quarantine all 10 people, you retest them to find out which person or persons would be the positive COVID case, and work from there. Right now, our numbers of students who are testing positive and the close contacts is rather low. We think pool testing could actually keep more kids out of school. And so at this time, where we don't seem to have a preponderance of positive COVID cases in the school, at this time, we don't think it's appropriate, cost-effective, resource-effective to do that at this time, but that could change if metrics change.
Thanks. Any questions on that?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I would just ask kind of where we got to as a committee and for the public towards, well, through the end of the summer and into the fall, as we created kind of we had created a checklist spreadsheet of what we were looking for, and we put a lot of these logistics. I'm just wondering if we can do that again, because I think I think it would be helpful for the community to know what we're looking for, or what we are working with the administration on, what it would take. For example, if we needed to use, if we needed extra staffing in order to bring a grade level in more than they are now, that we identify that, we know what it is, as well as, when we did this for the fall and up through now, we as a committee did not support going less than 6 feet. And Bob mentioned that in his remarks. And you mentioned it, that if that's where we take the stand as a committee, I know technically the guidelines still say 3 to 6, but we haven't wavered off of moving less than 6. So to let the public also know that. So kind of what we collectively are looking at to make the decision to expand in-person learning over the next. So that would be my ask.
Yeah, Mark, I think that's a great idea. I think that was helpful. Again, like you said, back in the summer and when we were going through this, to have that list, so we can get that going and then use that as a document to review at each meeting going forward.
Great.
Okay. Anything else, Bob?
No, and I would say, since Mark brought up staffing would definitely be something that, we would require additional staffing. One of the big challenges in hybrid learning that would become a bigger challenge in fully in-person learning is those students who remain fully remote. And it can be very daunting for a teacher to teach both sections simultaneously without a break, without some kind of assistance. So one of the things we'd be looking for is, ideally, if we could get another teacher at a grade level that could teach the remote cohort, I think that would be the ideal. I think practically that's a solution that's might not be possible, but looking at other paraprofessionals and aides that could assist the teacher, work with the remote group for a while the classroom teacher works with the in-person group, and then swapping off and having the classroom teacher work with the remote group and the facilitator work with the in-class group. Those types of things would make it much more manageable and more effective. Staffing, as you know, has been an issue. And one of the things I've done is I've reached out to some area colleges to see if there were any December graduates in their education programs that might be looking for opportunities to work in a school. So we've got our name out with a number of those. So, we're looking for ways to get qualified staff in for when we do get more kids into the classrooms.
Thank you. You have a budget update. Was that Terry?
Terry, can I just interrupt you for a
Oh,
second?
sure. Yeah.
A question has come in related to this on the email. So can I interject that question?
So I think before, okay, yeah, go ahead.
It's just related to the topic of
Yeah,
kids
please.
in, so I thought now would be a good time.
Yeah, go ahead.
And we might not know the answer, so we can just look into it. One of the emails that came in was, how do the numbers look in towns like Medway that already have the younger kids in 4 days a week? And what are their school transmission rates?
So I don't know, and I don't know what the Medway process is. I don't think we know what they're going through. So I'd caution us to compare us to the next districts, and nor do I know. So I don't know what their teacher contract is. So that's a tough question to answer. And
sure, I don't know is a perfectly okay answer, but I do think that Bob could reach out to the Medway superintendent and see how they did it, because if they already have kids in, he could see what they did and what their needs were, so that we don't have to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, that has been happening at the superintendent level, and also at the individual principal levels at the various schools, to get some information about how other systems have done it, some of the challenges that they came across that they weren't expecting or were expecting, and certainly we'll learn from our neighbors in that respect.
I think that's all the email was asking.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so budget update,
Sure.
Mr. Wiggins.
And Bob's
me
going to attempt to share his screen while I introduce the topic. What you're going to see is the first red, white, and blue sheet that is exposed to you, which is actually our third draft. And you'll remember last year, for example, I think we got to draft 12 at one point in time before we finished things. So not particularly unusual. Let me just say that, as you might expect, this year has a great deal of uncertainty as we go through the budget process, not the least of which is we have a stimulus package that has been extended through December of 2021. We have a new stimulus package passed just before the Christmas break or the December break that they haven't even released yet. So we don't know what the parameters are of that grant and how much money we will get and how it will impact both this year and next. And then obviously there is the potential for a third stimulus package in a very short period of time that will impact both the current fiscal year, but also 2021. So all of those come into play here, as you'll see in a bit. So again, I'm not going to spend a lot of time at the top other than to say that the budget number that you see at the total is the revised after the fall 20 town meeting. So this is the new number. Part of the uncertainty caused us to think about how we were doing things. And so in a sense, we're doing things a little backwards, but I think that's actually helping us a little bit. Because what we did know is we knew our staff. We could estimate steps, we could estimate lanes, we could estimate salaries. So we worked with what we knew. And so what you see for COLA, steps, lanes, and supplemental salaries is very close to being done. It still says estimated. There are some individual contracts to be negotiated. There are a couple of very small groups that we're talking with for CBAs, but for the most part, those numbers are very close to what you will see for the bulk of the salary changes in that regard. So that's, I think, one thing that we don't have to worry about changing significantly. Reduction of salaries funded by choice. You remember last year we were trying to reduce what we were using choice for. Right now, we're not anticipating a reduction nor an increase. As we go through the process, that may change. Likewise, right now, we're not anticipating any change in ed reform. However, this is one place that there may be able to have a reduction, and it may be able to be a somewhat significant reduction. So stay tuned on that. That is one place we may be able to make up some ground. The transition program, I would like to talk about in executive session because it does affect individuals and contracts, but it would potentially require $90,000 more in budget money. This is probably the biggest thing right now because of the impact that all the revolving funds have taken. But in this particular case, we're talking about the transportation revolving. I can't guarantee that I would have the money to fund bus driver salaries the way we normally fund bus driver salaries. So that becomes a salary hit of $127,000 and change. That's huge. Certainly the biggest single thing that happens on the salary side of the equation. Now, as we potentially come back into, and if we potentially come back into full attendance if the requirements for transportation change, if the vaccine gets out and people have more confidence traveling on the bus. It's all kinds of ifs out there. That's why I say this is a very uncertain budget at this point in time. That may give us in May and June, when we normally start collecting bus fees for the ensuing year, may give parents a greater level of confidence for signing up for buses again. But we just don't know that at this point in time. And so right now we're projecting a total salary increase of $904,000. Now you'll notice that's a 5.49% increase. Our target budget increase is 4%. And I did have a conversation with the town manager, and I have reason to believe that the town is going to actually try for that same goal, which is what the finance committee had asked us to move towards for our budget preparation. Questions on salaries? Hearing none, let's go down to expenses. So right now we're still analyzing both our out of district tuitions and our prepaid tuitions. I will tell you, this is probably a good news, bad news scenario. I do believe there'll probably be some increase in out of district tuitions. I also believe there will be some prepaid tuitions. I just don't know that they'll come from the traditional sources. I think some of the grants that I just spoke of will actually help us deal with some other issues in the budget. And so it will free up not tuition money, but other money that I may be able to use to prepay tuitions at the end of the year. I added a line this year for what I call increases above 2%. Now, down below, you know we have the traditional 2% increase in expenditures, but there are things that happen that are above 2%, and what this number represents are those individual line items totaled together, where I take the difference between what a 2% increase would be and what the increase is going to need to be to fund that line, and then obviously totaling it all together. So for example, I've noted that we're in a process of a 3-year phase-in of our share of munis costs. So that's an example. Next year, we will be having negotiations. So our legal would go up significantly. We are going to, per the CBA, need to increase course reimbursement, for example. So those are some examples of the types of things that we would have here. Now, the biggest thing in this line is the last line. We had under budgeted for the health office facilitator and medical liaison, if you will. That's our third nurse, who's been used extensively this year, not just for the Medicaid, but obviously for COVID-related issues. So that is something that the administration will look at, but it's been a very valuable position to us. And so at the moment, we're carrying that position. We then have the 2%, the traditional 2% increase. And then our total expenditure increase is only a 0.53% increase. But given the fact we had 5.49 above, that would mean our preliminary budget increase, again in January, before we start doing some more earnest work on it, is at 6.2%. Obviously, our target is 4. And that means to get to 4%, we would need a reduction of $344,069.47, give or take a penny. Now, I have noted that there are 4 ways that we can get there. First, as I talked about above, under salaries, there are some outright reductions we may be able to make within the budget. One of them may be, for example, in ed reform. Traditionally, I hate to say it, but that 2% increase that we have in expenses typically goes away. So there are things like that we can kind of normally expect are reductions that we can take, and we haven't totally gone through each line yet as an administrative team to see what we may be able to look at and see if we can reduce. There may be shifting some expenses to other state and federal grants. Now, that's not something that's going to be a long-term solution, but it is something that in this particular budget year may be something we can do. We may be able to shift some expenses to other local funds. This is the first year that the marijuana money kind of hits really for the total amount that we would expect to be available. And we had initially proposed at least $60,000 in salaries that we thought ought to be covered by that fund, those funds. I might be able to argue for more than that, but that's something, again, that the superintendent and I have to talk about with our counterparts on the town side and see what can be worked out and what their thinking is. But there is clearly a, I won't say a requirement, though I actually, it may be a requirement, I'm not sure, that some of that marijuana money does come to the schools to help us fund things. So that would be something. And then the fourth is not so much a budget cut, but if you remember what the philosophy of the finance committee was, is that both the select board and the school committee would propose 4% budgets. And then if they had something that they felt was a critical need over 4%, that they would make that argument. If the finance committee agreed with that argument, then the finance committee would, if they had the funds, fund that item or items, and then it would become part of the base for the ensuing year. Now, whether or not we have those items, I can't say yet because we haven't finished the budget. We're just beginning. But that is a possibility as well. And I say that because you'll note that unlike the past, you do not see any core and critical needs. When we met initially as an administrative team on this, we really felt that given where we were at a budget level and given that we had not had the traditional time to kind of go over goals and needs in each of the schools, that we would rather present you with where we are for basically a level services budget and tell you that we're still working on it. But this is where our work in progress is at the moment. Any other questions or any questions?
Madam Chair?
Go ahead, Mark.
Terry, I saw that, I know the revenue number or the starting point, the starting budget number is our revised number from the fall.
From the fall.
Are all of the, is the level service include all of the positions? So the learning facilitators that we've hired, et cetera, that additional staffing that supports the hybrid model?
That's a great question, Mark. No, it does not. It does not include learning facilitators or safety monitors or anything at the moment that we consider hybrid or remote learning related. So that would be an additional expense that we're still trying to look at and trying to ascertain whether or not it's going to be something that is going to continue next fall.
So this is my personal opinion. I know I've seen the vaccination schedule, et cetera, but I also know that it's not moving as fast as people originally thought. If we get into July and August, and there's delays, et cetera, my concern is, do we have to start the year potentially, and, the reality is we have to budget now and we have to go to town meeting in May and we're not going to know. So I personally think that we should have two budgets, or at least an understanding of, what would a hybrid model funding need to be, if it was a month, if it was 3 months, just so that we understand if we get to, unfortunately, if we find out in August that vaccinations aren't done, we don't have enough of the population who are willing to get it, and we've got to do something, other than just open up and be what we were a year and a half ago. We got to know how much money we're going to need.
I don't necessarily disagree with where you're headed. I think that's one of the reasons that we feel we certainly need to see the pre-December holiday stimulus money, which is in theory going to be approximately 4 times the CVRF money, which would be around $800,000, which would, again, in theory, fund some things through December of 21, which would be part of the next fiscal year. We also obviously haven't seen whether or not there's going to be yet another stimulus and what that will fund for schools. If both of those can cover some of those things, which I think are justifiable concerns, then the impact on the general operating budget might be less. If that is not the case, then obviously I think Mark has a very good point, and we need to figure out what those things are that are absolutely critical that need to be proposed as part of an operating budget.
So I guess my only point is, and my only request would be, we know what the number is, or we're working towards the, I mean, maybe it can be refined, but I would prefer not to wait till we know what the federal funding and state funding and grant funding may be. I'd like to know the cost that we need to cover with the, so we know, understanding what the worst case scenario is. And then if that money comes through and we don't need it through through other, town sources, great. But I don't want to be the other way around.
Right. I think it's a fairly easy number for us to identify as their staffing numbers, or largely staffing numbers. And I think at least I am operating under that assumption, Mark. I'm just not right now including them into the core budget. So I have that sort of as a separate spreadsheet.
Yeah.
And then obviously we can add that in or use it for grants or whatever we're going to do with it. But no, I agree with you. We can't wait on it. We need to know the numbers. If for no other reason than if we can use it for grants, typically speaking, the state is always wonderful in saying, here's your grant. You have 5 days to submit your application. So I kind of need to know those numbers for personal reasons.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Steve.
Mr. Wigan, thank you for this good first look, and I see that it is draft 3, so I know you put some time and energy into it. One thing that you had kind of just mentioned in passing, and I think it's important, and I know that we're a week away from a tri-board meeting and the discussions around trying to keep both the town side and the school side at 4% growth, which is obviously where we always try to strive to be. And then the part that you mentioned where if there's extra money, then kind of look at it. Right now, what this presents, there's no extra money here. This is level service budget. And it actually, and based on Mr. Conroy's question, it's really not level service if we go into next year in a hybrid model, because it doesn't include the extra staff and resources that we needed to bring on. So I think it's important as we go into this tri-board next week is that we're very careful, and that we're not going to just stop at 4 and then it's a grab on what other money there is, because we really have to be looking at a level service budget, because then if not, we're impacting staff, and we don't ever want to be in that place. And we've worked very hard not to be there. And I know that it's very early in the process, but I think as we as a committee approach this tri-board meeting next week, we have to take that into consideration and explain and be able to explain that we haven't even looked at a wish list of critical needs and necessary needs. This is strictly just to keep people employed going forward. We don't even have any pre-spending here. So that's just my thought process as we look at this as an initial draft.
I certainly can probably have for the committee an outline of some of those additional positions and costs, at least salary wise, for next week. But that's one of the reasons that I would also highlight the bus driver salaries, because some areas where you've traditionally funded and the town has basically said, oh, that's great, they have this revolving fund, lucky them. Well, we're not so lucky right now, because we've basically, that fund is gone. And it's gone for 2 reasons. One is we exhausted a great deal of it last year, and then this year with probably less than half of the bodies on buses. And then we chose, and I think it was the appropriate decision that you made the decision to modify your rates because there was a month where buses weren't running. There's simply less revenue. And by the time we roll around to next June, even with revenue that we'll bring in, I just can't guarantee the revenue that you've had in the past is going to be there, because we're not putting 55 kids on a bus. What we're putting on a bus is 20 or less. And really less because parents are still nervous about transporting their kids on buses, as you would expect. So I think that that's a discussion that also ties into this, not just the COVID related positions, but the fact that there are positions that you have been funding from other sources, and those other sources, at least for a year, may be not available to you.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mark.
I just want to, this is more just a point with the, if we removed, just from a increase perspective, excluding the transition program and the bus driver transfer, our levels, this percent increase overall would be down to 4.5%. So just from a perspective of, we're coming in at 6, we usually target 4. We collectively work pretty hard at getting our anticipated expenses to come in line, in a somewhere around 4%. The need above 4% is really being driven by these extraordinary elements for right now as we go into this year. So just to clarify.
Thank you. Terry, was there anything else on the budget?
Not for tonight, but I'm sure we'll talk more about it.
Okay. Bob, anything else on your update? I think that covered it all. I just wanted to make sure.
Yeah, I think we're all set.
Okay. So I'll move on. So under the chairman's report, so I hoped that we were able to have just a review of school committee meetings and how they're conducted, because we've gotten a lot of questions on, hey, I want to, I have some thoughts on this topic. How do I get those out? Or, can I attend a meeting, that type of thing. So Denise was very nice to put together a fact sheet. We have sent it off just to make sure that it is in fact facts. So as soon as we get that back, we will post it to the website and we'll send it out as an FAQ doc with our next agenda going forward. Just again, it's just a review on, so if you have a question for the school committee, or you'd like to attend a meeting, or you have a question about, if I had something to say during open session, how does that work? It's just a document that just kind of explains the process for school committee meetings and how the public can attend and be a part of them. So once that's all been looked at, we will post it to the school committee's site where we have all of our meeting minutes, and we'll send it out with our next agenda so everyone can have that. And then the last thing that we have is just an update on the Mascot process. So we've had a lot of requests for time from the committee for people to come and be able to speak about the process, or speak about the how they feel, that type of stuff. So what we've decided to do is, instead of having some people come to one meeting and some people go to another meeting, we're going to dedicate a meeting to this. So during our next school committee meeting, we're going to hold a public forum via Zoom, so we don't have to worry about having a lot of people in a space and can we accommodate. So we'll have it via Zoom. We're going to allow any community stakeholders to come and speak on this topic. And then following days, we will be sending out a Google form that you can register to be part of the public forum. We'll gather those Google forms, then we'll send out your time slot and kind of the rules of engagement. So we're going to give everyone equal time. Looks like it, we'll invite people in to the Zoom call, a few at a time, give you your 3 minutes to speak, and go forward from there. I will say that at the conclusion of the public forum, we will not be making any decisions at that time. This is just a meeting dedicated to allow the public to come in and speak on the topic. We will hold off, and at our next school committee meeting after the forum, then discuss what the next steps are. So again, we wanted to give the public an opportunity to come together, to be able to speak. And we thought it would be a better idea, instead of having some come at one meeting and depending on what's on the agenda, maybe they have some time and other people don't. So we wanted to make it a fair process, give everybody an opportunity to speak and the same amount of time. So we will do that at our next school committee meeting, which I believe is on February 2nd. So stay tuned. You will see a Google form go out in the next few days with instructions on how to register for that process. Any questions?
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Conroy.
Could I just ask that we maybe on the Google form, ask anybody who fills it out to indicate if there is because normally we start at 7 or 7:30, if there are time issues. So we've had Mr. Fallon come once or twice. Obviously he's the basketball coach. They have a game. Tonight they finished at about 7:40. So we've also received email and input and opinions from players on multiple teams who will be playing next Tuesday night. So if we just can ask, and I'm sure other people have ask if there is a time frame. So maybe, we can still start this earlier on the agenda, but knowing, depending on how many people or when it is, that we have some slots, in this 8:30 hour that for people to attend later.
Yeah, no, thank you. And we do want to make sure it's at a time where it can be that anyone who wishes to speak can. So to accommodate anyone, any of the students or faculty or staff that are attending the basketball games or playing, we will make sure that there's time slots later. And I'm fine with, we can start the meeting later too. And if there's a lot of conflict and a lot of people, it looks like that later is better. We can definitely even start at 8 or 7:30 and go from there. Or if we have a lot of interest from people who think they're going to have a conflict, we can even look to move it to the Thursday instead of the Tuesday. So let's get the Google form out and just kind of figure that out from there. And yes, if there's a sports, if somebody has a game and they still wish to speak, we will make sure that we make a time for that or that we have that later, so you can do that.
Great.
So thank you. Okay, so that's all we have, I think, on our agenda. We do have an executive session this evening, so I will take a motion to adjourn to executive session.
Madam Chair. There.
I don't think it's on Robin's agenda if you're looking at that.
What?
No.
There was an old business item. I don't know if you're going to talk about that on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's professional develop PD agenda for 119. That's under old or new business. I'm not sure. Bob, was that you?
I can speak to it.
Sure.
Today we had an entire staff in-service day on diversity and bias training through the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center, MARC, out of Bridgewater State. We had Dr. Megan McCoy, who led the staff in a morning presentation on bias, on recognizing implicit bias, on recognizing and addressing bias in curriculum, and dealing with students, staff, and the community in conversations about diversity, bias, race, things of that nature. And then in the afternoon sessions, we had building-based work in those areas. And the presentation was outstanding. And obviously, in light of the events that have happened, obviously since before this summer, but have been heightened since this summer, it's very appropriate use of professional learning time.
Great, thank you. Okay, are we ready now to go into executive session?
Yeah. Madam Chair,
Mr. Conroy.
I would make a motion that we go to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of contract negotiations for union and non-union personnel, not to return to open session.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? This requires a roll call vote. So Robin Briggs,
Yes.
Stephen Catalano,
Yes.
Mark Conroy,
Yes.
Denise Gibbons,
Yes.
and I'm a yes.